I want to welcome everybody to today's joint Senate, House, and Veterans Affairs Committee hearing with the Veteran Service Organizations. We're going to first kick things off by hearing from the veterans of foreign wars. I want to thank you, special thank you to the VFW members who have traveled from every corner of our state to be here, particularly the Montanans in attendance, which include Joe Fletcher, Tim Peters, Jack Hawley, James Layton, and Fred Hamilton. Thanks for being here, fellas. I am proud to have recently introduced the Fred Hamilton Lost Military Records Act based on Fred's own experiences as a Montana vet trying to get access to his earned benefits. When military treatment records are lost after being transmitted to the VA by the Department of Defense, this bill would allow the VA to consider other documentation when determining compensation and pension benefits. This is a great example of how Congress relies on the VFW to keep us updated on the needs of our veterans and their families, and how we best support these folks. Historic achievements like the PACT Act simply wouldn't have been possible without your vision, your leadership, and your passion. Thank you. And make no mistake about this, it was the VSOs and the veterans who put pressure on Congress to do the right thing for our toxically exposed veterans and their survivors. You made democracy work. You held us accountable. And you flipped the votes to get the job done. We now are focused on getting the Major Richard Starr Act across the finish line to finally deliver combat injured veterans their full DOD and VA benefits, and passing the Elizabeth Dole 21st Century Veterans Healthcare and Benefits Improvement Act to bolster veterans' access to healthcare benefits and services for which they are entitled and for which they deserve. We also need to hold claim sharks accountable for preying on veterans' hard-earned benefits through the Guard VA Benefits Act. But just like with the PACT Act, we need your continued partnership to be successful. Your advocacy is democracy at work, and we're here today to continue taking our cues from you on the work ahead. So thank you for being here. With that, I will turn it over to Chairman Bost.
Thank you, Chairman Tester. Good morning. Say a special hello to all of you, and a special hello to all those from Illinois. And if you're from Illinois, you know my part of Illinois is way south. But we want to thank you for being here. And we want to thanks to you and our friends on the other side of the Capitol for hosting this first joint hearing during the second session of the 118th Congress. Now, it is an honor to join my friends, Chairman Tester, Ranking Member Moran, and Ranking Member Takano, in welcoming you to the VSO hearing. I would also like to thank the VFW's National Commander-in-Chief, Duane Sarmiento, I want to get that right, Sarmiento, and his wife, Ellen, for being here today. And I would also like to give a shout out to the Illinois State Commander, Mr. Brett Nella. Now, if you are joining us from Illinois, I want you, if you would, just stand, wave, would you? Okay, fantastic. A few in the back there. All right. Well, welcome to D.C., and thank you for traveling here from the best state in the Union. There.
I don't know about that.
We knew we'd get a response. As most of you know by now, being a chairman is not a responsibility I take lightly. It's very personal to me and my family. Many of you know I'm a Marine. Hoorah! Yeah. As a third-generation Marine, and my son is a lieutenant colonel at this time, and a grandson who's a corporal at this time in the Marine Corps. So you can see it's a family thing. But with that, our family knows, and each one of us up here know the sacrifices you've made. And I know that at the end of the day, you just want the access to health care, benefits, and services you've earned without a headache. The veterans of foreign war are great advocates for both here in D.C. and across the country in every community. You have my commitment that we will continue to fight for you and the voices you represent. You just heard you just as hard as you have fought for us. That's why we want to make sure we do that. You know, I'm proud of all that we have accomplished together in the last few years, as mentioned by the chairman, including the president signing into the bipartisan PACT Act into law. The legislation is the largest expansion of health care and benefits for veterans and their families in recent history, and we're going to make sure the VA gets it right. And when they make mistakes, I'll be the first to hold them accountable and get answers for you if they've made those mistakes. We need all of you to continue to let us know what is happening out in the field, and when it comes to wait times for toxic exposed veterans, health care, and other claims decisions. As chairman, a top priority of mine is to hold VA accountable for you, the men and the women who serve no matter what. So please call or visit our website or call us to report any waste, fraud, or abuse. We need your help in making the VA what you deserve. Now, looking ahead, I'm focused on making improvements where we can to modernize the delivery of care and services at the VA. We have made great progress in identifying improvements that could be made to the Transition Assistance Program, or the TAP program, through our oversight efforts. See, the TAP program, I always tell people that whenever I got out of the Corps, we had a TAP program. The colonel tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, I'll see you later." And that was it. So we've actually improved quite a bit by having it, and we're working on the legislation to increase accountability at DOD as well, as adding separate TAP courses for National Guard and Reserve and military spouses. We will make sure TAP is worthwhile experience for every single service member. Now, I'm also proud to have led the efforts to safeguard veterans' Second Amendment rights. As a chairman of VA and as a sportsman, fixing the VA's discriminatory process towards veterans was a challenge, and I'm going off script here. But I'm going to tell you, the frustration I felt when found out that a veteran, all they have to do is seek from the VA, and have done this for 30 years. All they do is ask for a fiduciary, and if they get a fiduciary, they lose their Second Amendment rights without due process. That's ridiculous. It's went on too long. It's discouraged veterans from going to seek the VA, and we were hoping we're getting that problem fixed now. We will be working on that through the budget that's hopefully passing today. I'm proud to say that our efforts have drawn attention to this injustice, and they paid off. The language of my bill is currently included in the VA's appropriation bill and will soon become law. As the VFW knows, fixing this is long overdue. I thank Senator Moran and Tester for helping to get us this provision across the finish line. And I believe that Senator Moran introduced that bill the first time back in 2009. So it's finally coming to fruition. Right now, we're in a bipartisan negotiation to get the package for the veterans bill to the president's desk as well. This comprehensive package includes many VFW's priorities, like expansion to the VA long-term care service to put veterans into control of where they want to live out their days, strengthening the community care programs, expansion to the Vet Tech education program, and support for homeless programs to ensure VA can continue to lift veterans out of homelessness and get them back on track, and so much more. Now, I would like to, with my colleagues, to get this package done as soon as possible. But make no mistake, our work is nowhere near close to being finished. On my side of the Capitol, we're having held over 50 oversight hearings, brought more than 100 VA officials to answer to the veterans taxpayers that they serve, and connected with over 10,000 veterans and their families through in-person and telephone town halls. My door is always open and will continue to always be open, because veterans are still fighting a VA bureaucracy to access the benefits that they want when and where they need them, dealing with the unperforming VA employees who don't have the veterans' best interests in mind, and reeling with the impact of Bidenomics and raising costs of living, which is returning causes, increasing the homelessness across the country, including with our veterans. These might seem like small things, but when it comes down to it, they impact veterans every single day. And I will ensure that the VA gets the budget it needs to complete its goals. I look forward to meeting that mission alongside of all of you. And I thank you again for being here today, and with that, I yield back.
I'll now recognize Ranking Member Moran.
Chairman Tester, thank you. And thank you and Chairman Bost for hosting us. And it's good to be here with both of you and Ranking Member Takano once again as we do our oversight and hear our instructions and suggestions from the VFW and many VSO organizations today and tomorrow. I thank all of our witnesses for being here, for the members who traveled to join us here today, for service members and their family members, for veterans, for caregivers, all who are here to care and love and see that we do the right thing when it comes to those who served our country. I highlight the Kansans who are in the office, and I appreciate the strong relationship and friendship we have. It was good to see the VFW in our office yesterday and DAV tomorrow and others throughout this week. None of the work we do here is at all possible without the contributions and support, the efforts that are made by the VSO community, including those present today. We, in my view, have accomplished some major things in recent years. None are insignificant and all are important, but there is more, much more to be done, particularly in making certain that when we pass legislation, it's not just a high five and a press release. It actually results in the increased well-being and welfare of those veterans that we are committed to serving. We need to make sure that DC, the Department of Veterans Affairs, is implementing correctly. And when we've made errors in our legislation, we need to make sure those errors are corrected. I know that many in this room share priorities together in this second session of Congress, including protecting and expanding and ensuring timely access to quality health care, both at the VA, medical facilities, and in the community, ensuring proper implementation of the PACT Act to avoid further backlog of disability claims, engaging with VA to make certain that the PACT Act's presumptive decision process is responsive to veterans, increasing and updating benefits for survivors, assisting veterans in rural areas with unique challenges they face, continuing efforts to prevent veteran suicide, strengthening and supporting for transitioning members, service members, student veterans, and homeless veterans, as well as individuals within the caregiver, survivor, and guard and reserve communities. This is a great committee to serve on. I've served on it since my original days in the House. 14 years in the House, 14 years in the Senate. I've asked for this committee assignment in all of my time in Congress. And I want to take this opportunity to continue to express my gratitude for the help by those in this room and my commitment to work together this year and into the future. Thank you all for your tireless advocacy on behalf of veterans and survivors across the country. Your efforts are critical. They do make a difference, and every American should know the value of the Veteran Service Organization, and every veteran should see the opportunities to serve other veterans through a VSO. I look forward to your testimony, and I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Moran. I'll now recognize Ranking Member Takano.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Tester. Before I begin my comments, I'd like to just take a moment to send well wishes to Rick Weidman. Many of us know and have worked with Mr. Weidman over the years, and he has been a forceful advocate for veterans on behalf of Vietnam Veterans of America. Rick, you are in our thoughts, and I look forward to your returning to hold us accountable in ensuring that Congress properly supports the next generation of service members and veterans. Well, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Moran, thank you for hosting us here on the Senate side, and it's a pleasure to be here with my colleague Chairman Bost, and it's great to see all the VSO members and veteran advocates here for our annual discussion of priorities. First and most important question, are there any Californians in the room? California, in my opinion, is the best state. So welcome, and I thank all of you who could not be with us in person and who are watching us at home. So it's an honor to join all the members of the House and Senate Committees on Veterans Affairs to hear directly from the Commander-in-Chief and representatives of Veterans of Foreign Wars. I would also like to welcome the organizations we'll be hearing from on the second panel. It's great to have all of you here as well, and I look forward to hearing about your priorities. And I thank you all for your continued advocacy and support for the veteran community. Now, as we approach the 2-year anniversary of the Honoring Our PACT Act, implementation of that historic legislation remains a high priority for both me personally and the House Veterans Affairs Committee Democrats at large. We remain committed to ensuring that VA has the resources it needs to do the job we asked it to do, and that it does that job to the best of its ability. And I will resist vigorously any attempts to undermine the law and shift back to the old funding paradigm of pitting one veterans program against another or against other domestic spending priorities by undermining the Toxic Exposure Fund, which is used to pay for PACT Act health care and benefits, as some have proposed to undermine. Veterans and their families deserve better than that, and so I hope VFW and other VSOs will join me in opposing any efforts to pull back from the promise of the PACT Act. To date, VA is receiving and processing more claims for disability compensation than ever before. VA has opened its doors in extraordinary ways to more toxic exposed veterans so they can get the care they need. The last I looked at the dashboard, 720,000 claims have been approved for the PACT Act. And while the PACT Act continues to be a good news story, the law is not without its challenges, particularly with respect to hiring and training of new staff, modernizing aging medical facilities, and enacting information technology updates. So as I said, we will continue to monitor VA's progress with this law and push the department harder when necessary. And I will work to build on the success of the PACT Act to expand coverage for veterans exposed to toxins both abroad and here at home. But beyond the PACT Act, however, a great deal remains to be done on behalf of veterans during this Congress. And among my principal priorities are preserving women veterans' health care freedoms, including by ensuring that they have access to the full range of reproductive care and counseling, including IVF, which Julia Brownlee has an excellent bill on the Veterans Infertility Treatment Act, which would codify access to IVF and remove the service connection requirement. So IVF, so reproductive health care is veterans' health care, and we must make it the law. Delivering VA for all veterans, irrespective of their age, gender, sexual orientation, or race. Working to end veteran homelessness and food insecurity. Ensuring benefits parity for Americans veterans, whether they be active duty, guard, or reserve. And rejecting efforts to privatize VA by siphoning off more of VHA's budget for private health care. Now, unfortunately, we have yet to make much progress on those issues in this Congress. In fact, we have seen a noticeable backslide on a number of key veterans' priorities over the last year, like veterans' homelessness and suicide. We have seen issues related to caregivers and survivors get nothing but lip service. And we've seen an exponential growth in the number and scale of claim sharks, which my colleague Chris Pappas has been trying to crack down on with his excellent GUARD Act. But sadly, the legislative response to those issues from this Congress has largely been non-existent. Instead, we've spent time chasing scandals where they don't exist, complaining about flags and mottos, and arguing about whether it's a good thing that VA is open and welcoming to veterans from all walks of life. At best, it has been a distraction from the more pressing issues at hand. And at worst, it has been a case of severely misplaced legislative priorities. However, I commit to those who are watching today that I will continue to fight for real, concrete, actionable solutions to the problems veterans currently face. Now, I trust that I will continue to have the VSOs as a partner in that effort. You all have been a tremendous force for good, especially when that voice is unified toward the same policy goal. We saw that with your collective advocacy for the PACT Act, which was instrumental in getting that bill over the hump. And so I applaud your past efforts and I encourage your future ones. And I will always be your champion. I will add, though, that I am less optimistic, albeit still hopeful, about the willingness or ability of the House majority to do what is right and necessary to address key veterans' priorities. Case in point, I think everyone in this room, probably in this country, views ending veteran homelessness as a key priority. And I would posit that this is indeed an eminently achievable goal. There are policy tools that we know work. work well and quickly to reduce homelessness among veterans. Yet we have allowed VA's authority to use those tools to expire. And in our efforts to renew them through the HOME Act, we've continually heard complaints about cost and complexity. Not to mention that we have seen the cynical ploy of pushing through knowingly flawed legislation that the Senate can't do anything with to pretend that the issue has been addressed, as was the case with both the HOME Act and the Elizabeth Dole Home Care Act. And on top of that, the improved versions of both of these bills are now being held hostage to the majority's desire to privatize more VA health care. So I implore my colleagues to reject the politics of scandal and the culture war and focus on the real and actual problems that veterans face on a daily basis so that we can make real, lasting progress. Veterans deserve better than what this Congress is currently delivering. We can do better, and we have to muster up the courage to deliver. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for yielding, and I will conclude by simply saying, don't feed the sharks.
I don't know if the VFW knows this, but you've got some fine people back here working in Washington, D.C., and I want to introduce one of them, Executive Director of the VFW Washington office, Ryan Gallucci, to introduce the VFW national officers.
Thank you, Chairman Tester. Members of the Senate House Veterans Affairs Committees, I'm honored to have the privilege of introducing the national officers of the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States and our auxiliary. Mr. Chairman, please allow me to ask those to be introduced to please remain standing, and I wish to request the audience to hold its applause until all have been introduced. From the VFW Auxiliary, our National VFW Auxiliary President, Carla Martinez from Utah. Senior Vice President of our auxiliary, Brenda Bryant of Missouri. Junior Vice President, Lois Callahan from Arkansas. And the National Auxiliary Secretary Treasurer, Ann Pantelikis from Connecticut, and Commander-in-Chief's wife, Ellen Sarmiento from New Jersey. Now our VFW national officers. Senior Vice Commander-in-Chief, Alfred J. Al Liphart and his wife, Carol from Georgia. Junior Vice Commander-in-Chief, Carol Whitmore and her husband, Brad from Iowa. Junior Vice Commander-in-Chief Designee, Tim Peters from Montana. Adjutant General Dan West from Texas. Quartermaster General Mark Garduno from Delaware. Assistant Adjutant General Brian Walker from Tennessee. Chaplain David Frey from Idaho. Judge Advocate General J. Douglas Whitaker from Mississippi. Chief of Staff Carrie Pritchett from New Jersey. Inspector General Peter J. Massetti from Germany. Surgeon General Curtis Doc Bowman from Oklahoma. Now joining the VFW Commander-in-Chief here on the dais, Chairman of the VFW National Legislative Committee, Stanley Borashevitz from Connecticut. Director, VFW National Legislative Service, Patrick D. Murray from Rhode Island. I'll skip over Representative Van Drew, our Commander-in-Chief. Director of VFW National Veterans Service, Michael Figlioli from Massachusetts. Finally, I would like to recognize the 10th class of VFW SVA Legislative Fellows, our past auxiliary presidents and past VFW commanders-in-chief who are with us, as well as, I don't know if they came in, but Tanya Starr, the widow of Major Richard Starr, and Senator Elizabeth Dole, a champion for our nation's caregivers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you all for being here. Now I want to recognize Representative Jeff Van Drew to introduce VFW Commander Sarmiento.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, Senators, my colleagues in the House of Representatives, it is an honor to be here, and it is my honor to introduce Duane Sarmiento, a good New Jersey name, right?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
He's a distinguished man and a distinguished individual, a man who spent most of his life dedicated to serving his nation, a fellow native of my South Jersey, a commander-in-chief of the Veterans of Foreign Wars. Mr. Duane Sarmiento is a great man. He was born and raised in New Jersey. Duane enlisted in the United States Navy in 1988. He served on active duty from 1988 to 1997, and in the United States Reserve from 2002 to 2006. During his time on active duty, Duane deployed in support of Operations Desert Storm and Desert Shield, where he earned his VFW eligibility. In recognition of his service, he received the Navy Achievement Medal, the Navy Combat Action Ribbon, the Navy Good Contact Medal, the Southwest Asia Service Medal with 3 campaign stars, Saudi Arabian Medal for the liberation of Kuwait, and the Kuwaiti Medal for the liberation of Kuwait again, and numerous other medals and ribbons, too many to name here today. Following his military service, Duane chose to continue serving his community of Gloucester County in the state of New Jersey. He served as a police officer with the Greenwich Township Police Department and later the Gloucester County Sheriff's Department. Yeah, he's done a lot of stuff. Upon his retirement from law enforcement, Duane served his fellow veterans in Gloucester County as the County Director of Veterans Affairs. He held that position until his election as a VFW National Officer. Duane joined the VFW in 1990 at Post 5579 in Gibbstown, New Jersey, where he maintains his Gold Legacy Life membership. He has served in elected and appointed positions in the Post District, Department, and national levels, to include his election as a state commander, VFW Department of New Jersey from 2018 to 2019. On July 27th, 2023, Duane was elected as the 115th Commander-in-Chief of our nation's most established combat veterans organization, the VFW. Since his election, Duane has continued connecting with and understanding the experiences of veterans, active service members, and their families. Not only has he traveled across the country and visiting their families in almost all of the 50 states, but has also visited veterans and our men and women in uniform living and serving overseas in Europe, Central America, and Southeast Asia. Duane has made it his mission to advance the VFW's 3 pillars of advocacy: assistance and camaraderie. He is committed to serving those who serve and embrace them and advocating for them wherever he travels. That's why he's here to testify on their behalf today. You know, there are just a few brief words on veterans. I served in the VA as a dentist. And I saw broken hearts, broken bodies, broken minds, and broken souls. There are no words, there are no proclamations, there are no resolutions, there are no awards that we can give them that suffice for what they've done and what they are willing to do. I'll be happy one day when we don't hear the words unemployed veterans, homeless veterans, veterans without health care, veterans that don't have educational opportunities, veterans with a higher suicide rate than anybody else in the United States of America, and veterans and active military that don't have to have woke policies forced upon them. We need a strong military and strong support for our veterans, period. Duane represents that. I am proud to introduce them. God bless you, Duane. God bless this VFW. God bless this committee for the work it does. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman, for that introduction. Congressman Sarmiento, I will now turn it over to you for the VFW's.
He'd be in my district. He'd beat me.
He hasn't.
He probably could.
He hasn't told you that he just filed yesterday.
I got to check. Come on, Duane. You didn't tell me.
I'll tell you one thing. When I called you Congressman, I got boss attention. I'll tell you that. Commander Sarmiento, I'll now turn it over to you for VFW's opening statement. Thank you all for being here, and we look forward to your statement.
Chairman Tester and Bost, ranking members Moran and Takano, thank you for the opportunity to represent the 1.4 million members of the VFW and our auxiliary here today. the 117th Congress passed the PACT Act, which was a generational bill that provided care and benefits for veterans of all eras. I'd like to take this moment to show you just who the VFW represents and why the PACT Act was so important to us. It provided expanded care for Vietnam veterans exposed to Agent Orange. Could my Vietnam veterans please stand? It provided expanded care for Gulf War veterans exposed to sarin and other unknown chemicals and toxins. Could my Gulf War veterans please stand? And it provided new presumptive conditions in care for veterans who served in Iraq, Afghanistan, Africa, Eastern Europe, and other areas where they were exposed to burn pits and other airborne hazards. Could my post 9/11 veterans please stand? Thank you. This is who the VFW is and who your work is helping today. The men and women in this room are a cross-section of the VFW, a cross-section of our veteran population, and a cross-section of America. This is why I call upon you as our leaders in Washington, D.C., to continue fighting for those who served, are still serving, and to every day meet the challenge. Now let's talk about claim sharks. With the passage of the PACT Act, the VFW saw an increase in online advertisements from predatory claim sharks that target veterans' earned VA benefits. They argue that the high fees they charge make them more effective in assisting veterans than the free services offered by VA-accredited veteran service organizations. That is false. They say that there's no way for them to seek VA accreditation. That is also false. Anyone can seek accreditation, but they refuse to do so because they would no longer be able to charge exorbitant fees, especially for work they didn't do. Companies that prey upon veterans and disregard the law must be held accountable, not rewarded with legislation to legalize their predatory behavior. It's distasteful that these claim sharks take money from veterans, but it's absolutely disgusting that they take money from survivors. The VFW strongly supports the Guard VA Benefit Act, which would only reinstate penalties for charging veterans unauthorized fees for VA claims. Claim sharks are spending millions of dollars to lobby against the Guard Act here in D.C., stalling a federal fix. So instead, we're working in the states to enforce the law. New Jersey and New York have already made claim sharks illegal, and bills are moving forward through the legislatures all around the country. The claim sharks have fought our bills in every state and continue to try to buy influence. But we will never give up because we have the law and the moral high ground on our side. Yeah. This is why it is so important to the VFW, because VA claims are the gateway to life-saving care and benefits. We invest heavily in our professional service program at 24 military bases. Every year, VFW-accredited representatives assist approximately 20,000 service members with their benefits delivery at discharge or BDD claims before they leave the military, meaning they can receive benefits almost immediately upon separation for free. Unfortunately, access to accredited representatives for BDD is inconsistent. That is why the VFW highly recommends the passage of the TAP Promotion Act, which will ensure all service members have direct access to accredited representatives during TAP classes. The VFW commends the VA for starting down this path in January, but this only reinforces the need to make this the law. Transition is an important milestone in a service member's life, and the VFW believes we need to do everything we can to support that journey. That is why the VFW works with like-minded organizations like Onward Ops, USO Pathfinder, and Wounded Warrior Project to offer data-driven resources for transitioning service members. We have also partnered with Columbia University to produce a report on transition that will come from real-time experiences from those exiting the military. Recently, transitioned former junior enlisted veterans have higher rates of homelessness, unemployment, and suicide than other veterans. We must do everything we can to help ease that transition, especially for those who are at higher risk. Trying to stop suicide or homelessness is meaningless if we ignore the root causes. The VFW urges Congress to pass not just a number act, to direct VA to report on all its programs and veterans in crisis. Preventing crisis requires that looking at more than when was your last mental health appointment. We need to look at all VA benefits to know what actually works instead of fumbling to react when it's too late. VA's own research shows that factors like financial stability, housing, and jobs protect against crisis. But if veterans have problems accessing benefits like the GI Bill, why would they trust the VA with their health care? After years of sounding this alarm, VFW is optimistic that VA may finally be listening, but we can do more. After the Navy, I spent 20 years as a police officer. If you got the gun in your mouth, it's too late. We need to understand what happens before a veteran gets to that point. Next, we need to make sure our veterans receive the full benefits they have earned. Year after year, and Congress after Congress, the VFW has advocated to fix concurrent receipt, and this year is no different, because Congress has yet to finish the work it started and promised to finish 20 years ago. Our government says it holds veterans in high regard, yet we keep using them as a way to save money. Military retirement and VA disability are two fundamentally different benefits earned for two entirely different reasons, yet the law calls this double dipping. The Major Richard Starr Act gained overwhelming bipartisan and bicameral support from the 117th Congress, yet not enough to send it to the president's desk. The VFW fears the 118th Congress will end up with the same result. We must pass the Richard Starr Act so veterans receive the full benefits they have earned through their blood and sweat in service to our country. Another inequity that demands the attention of Congress is how we treat our veterans living overseas. I'm a Filipino-Italian-American from New Jersey. I know it's an odd mix. I still have many friends and family who live overseas. Many are veterans who have earned care and benefits through their service. We know there will never be the same level of care outside the U.S., but what many overseas veterans face is indifference and apathy. Common services like direct deposit are not available to overseas veterans. In many countries, services like medical care and postal service for veterans are being reduced. These aren't just veterans who retired for a better beach. Many of these veterans are still employees who work for the Department of Defense or state, supporting interest in the military mission. Cutting off service for overseas veterans should be viewed as a national security risk, which is why we need to enact common sense reforms for veterans living outside the U.S. This is why the VFW calls on Congress to undertake substantial reform to the VA Foreign Medical Program. I want to thank my Congressman, Jeff Van Drew, for his interest in our efforts. The current Foreign Medical Program is literally a riddle wrapped in a puzzle because experiences vary widely depending on where you are and who you know. We have to provide consistent access to care and support to veterans overseas. VFW welcomes the opportunity to discuss these issues with you. Lastly, I close my remarks. I feel it is necessary to remind everyone of our sacred obligation to make sure we never leave a fallen comrade behind. Former President Calvin Coolidge stated, "The nation which forgets its defenders will itself be forgotten." That not only applies to the men and women who made it back home from the fighting overseas, but also those who never made it home. We must continue to fully fund and prioritize DoD's critical mission to make sure all service members who went missing or prisoners of war are recovered and returned with honor in their final resting place on U.S. soil. Moreover, it is imperative that DoD properly recognize the dangerous service of all Americans overseas. I've had the chance to visit with service members around the world over this last year, whether it's alongside DPAA on a mountain in Laos or alongside decision makers and care providers at SHAPE or Landstuhl. I've heard firsthand about the needs of today's force, which is why those who are fighting terrorism in the Middle East or deterring aggression on the eastern flank of NATO deserve proper recognition for their service on behalf of a grateful nation. Chairman Tester and Boss, ranking members Moran and Takano, your committees have done so much over recent years to serve our veterans, culminating with the PACT Act. The VFW thanks you for all your hard work and work yet to come. Thank you for the opportunity to share the VFW's priorities as we enter our next 125 years in service to our veterans. We are eager to answer any questions you may have.
Look what you started. So there, for the information of the folks on the dais, there'll be 3-minute rounds, and there's going to be a lot of questions to be asked, so try to keep it to that. I'm going to start out, Commander, asking you about mental health. Look, Senator Bozeman and I introduced not just a Numbers Act, requires the VA, as you pointed out in your opening statement, to more closely examine the association between veterans and their benefits and suicide. This bill would have the VA look at the veterans' use of disability compensation, education, employment benefits, home loans, foreclosure assistance, and housing assistance programs. So my question to you is this: how could this analysis of veterans' use of VBA programs improve VA suicide prevention efforts?
Oh, it's on. I never turned it off. I apologize. Chairman, we fully support this. You know, what happens is, and it, just like I said, when a veteran commits suicide, it's like, when was his last appointment? We need to look at the total package with VHA and VBA. What benefits were they receiving? Because when it's too late, if we're worrying about when their last mental appointment is, it's too late. We have to say, what's the root causes here? You know, suicide and homeless, I got to be quite honest, Mr. Chairman, a lot of the root causes are the same. You know, when you say, you know, we'd like to have zero veteran homelessness, zero veteran suicide. You know, I think in a perfect world, you're right, that's going to happen. I can tell you as a police officer, if we can save one, if we can look in and help out with their transition, because what causes it? Transition. You know, financial stability, jobs. That's the stat we'll never know, because if they have that, they never get to the end point. But when we look back on the data and see what they received, that's when we can start making a change. And if we can save 1 out of 5, 2 out of 5, that's a home run. That's a home run. And that goes the same for homelessness. It's the same root causes. Because, and I'll be done, and that got me rattled, I apologize.
It's okay, you did good. You did good. Thank you. Look, my friend Tim Peters, who's sitting right over there, who's the VFW's junior vice designee, informed me some time ago that veterans are being denied earned VA benefits because of federal government lost their military records through no fault of their own. We recently introduced legislation to address this, named after a Montana veteran by the name of Fred Hamilton, who I believe is here today. And could you tell me, I know the VA supports this bill, could you please discuss how this Fred Hamilton Lost Records Act would improve the claims process for veterans?
Absolutely, I'd love to. And Fred is in the room, I truly believe that, or I know that. So the Fred Hamilton, which you bring up, I mean, veterans are being denied a claim because the VA lost their records. This is a no-brainer. I mean, I get it. The government's big and bureaucratic. And the bureaucracy of the government, I understand. And I understand there's got to be tweaks to be made. And I appreciate you putting this in. And I hope this committee forward this out, because when you get down to the bottom line of this, a veteran puts a claim in, they get their medical record and service record, and they deny it because they lost it. That doesn't even make sense to me. But then thank you for taking the initiative on this, and I know this is a no-brainer for the committee, sir.
Thank you, Commander. Chairman Boston.
First off, let me say that there's sometimes that each one of us that when we deal with government, a lot of things don't make sense to us. Okay. That being said, Commander, we know the VFW is a staunch supporter of VA's community care network, but we know some veterans are still waiting too long to get the care they want. What do you think the VA needs to do to improve community care access?
It's an excellent question, Chairman. It's a balancing act with the VA. I use all VA healthcare. I truly do. Everything I do, I use the VA. And there's sometimes I get farmed out in community care. But it's a balancing act. You can't have too much of one. The VA secretary was just briefing us saying, you know, it's in some places leading up to 40% are getting sent out. And even he agrees that that's not right. That we need to, it's a more of a balancing act. Because what happens is, and I talk to veterans all the time, you get sent out to community care, you're on the hook to pay the bill even though the VA sent you because you're the one getting the late notices. Where's my money? Where's my money? And you're being drugged into court because the VA sent you out. There's a fine line here. We have to find it, do this balancing act with it. I mean, community care, we are supportive of it. It does help care, especially in rural areas, sir. But for the veterans to sit there and be billed with late notices time after time after time, it creates undue stress. And I'm hoping that we can find this balancing act.
You know, I was pleased to be working with Senator Moran, Senator Tester, Speaker Johnson. We were able to get the language of my bill, H.R. 705, to protect the Second Amendment rights for veterans, including the appropriation, included in the appropriations bill. We'll consider this week, and I'm grateful to VFW past support of this issue. Is this something that the VFW will continue to support?
I absolutely guarantee the VFW will continue this support of this. What it does, you know, and sir, you brought it up in the beginning. We're not asking, veterans aren't asking for anything special. All we're asking for is due process that every other agency or any other person that goes through any other service in the federal government gets. Not some a VA administrator deciding, we're taking your guns. All we want is due process. However that plays out, then so be it. But that's all we're asking for, and thank you for spearheading us.
Well, thank you, and my time is running short, and there's a lot of others. Senator Sullivan, I think you're recognized. There you are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to ask my fellow Alaskans if they're in the audience, if you can stand and be recognized. You know, I think they get. Here we go, and I think they get the award for traveling the furthest. Maybe a little bit dispute with the Hawaiians. But we also get the award, no offense, on Alaska, more veterans per capita. That is a fact. So how about a round of applause for that? All right. And then I was just going to mention, I retired from the Marine Corps last month after 30 years. And so now I take one title, a U.S. Marine, which I'm very proud of, and now another very distinguished title, an American veteran. So I'm very excited about that. Commander, I want to thank you and your team and all the other VSOs. Last year, you might remember, I really focused on this Camp Lejeune issue. It was a priority of so many of our VSOs. We had sick families at Camp Lejeune. We gave them the legislation to get funded, to get better. Unfortunately, we had some law firms that wanted to make sure they got the money and not the Marines, the sick Marines. Everybody came out against that. We finally got an executive order saying that there is a cap on attorney's fees, 20 to 25% period. The Attorney General of the United States has said if a law firm charges sick Marines more than that, they will be civilly or criminally liable. Okay? Really important. Some of these law firms are charging 60 and 70% contingency fees. It's disgusting. So can I ask you very quickly, and I know when the other VSOs come up, can you make sure that we're still getting the word out to our veterans that there's now a cap? And this is really important. Even if they've already signed a contract with a law firm, 70%, I've asked the Attorney General, that is null and void. And if that law firm tries to charge a family of sick Marines, they could be criminally liable. So can you and are you getting the word out so none of our Marines and their families are getting ripped off by these unscrupulous law firms?
Sir, we are absolutely getting the word out. We raised the alarm on this last year.
I know you
I want to
did.
thank you for spearheading this. Look, we put out to our people. Our VFW actually partnered with some law firms that we already gave us the reduced rate
Yeah.
because before this was passed, you're right, 60, 70%. Insanity.
Crazy.
Absolute insanity. And we're glad this has been codified into law. And, sir, thank you for being a member of the Veterans of Foreign Wars.
I am.
Yes.
Well, Commander, I have a reputation on this committee of going way over my time, and I think it ticks off a lot of my Senate colleagues. I don't want to tick off the House colleagues. So with 1 second left, I'm going to yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ranking Member Takano, you're recognized.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commander Sarmiento, I know you're not a member of Congress, but in the event you become one, I know you're going to join the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus. So with that, let me just say, I want to thank the VFW for your support for the Guard and Reserve GI Bill Parity Act, and I'm happy to report that Mr. Levin introduced the bill yesterday with Senators Moran and Tester, and I'm happy to support it again this Congress. And I absolutely echo your written testimony that it is beyond time that the National Guard and Reserve service members receive a GI Bill eligibility for the entirety of their time in uniform. So my question to you is this. To be absolutely clear and blunt to the other members of these two committees, when you say in your written testimony that the time is now for parity, are you calling for Guard and Reserve GI Bill parity to be passed in this Congress?
Chairman Takano, yes, we are.
Well, let's get it done.
Absolutely.
Now, let me go on. Your testimony discusses how the social determinants of health are intertwined with veteran suicide prevention work, and you highlight homelessness and financial instability, unemployment, and justice involvement. And I agree with your push to see better data transparency out of VA to address these issues. And I guess what I would ask is how you would respond to politicians who drag their feet in paying for programs in this space or try to cut and defund social safety nets. What are they doing to veterans? Now, as a follow-up, well, let me just ask you about that. What do you think about politicians trying to cut or defund social safety net programs?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to turn that over to our subject matter expert, Pat Murray.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, a lot of these issues require funding, upfront funding and full funding so that these programs can continue all year long without interruptions. The start-stop of funding affects them, which ultimately trickles down and affects veterans. We need to make sure that these programs continue to be fully funded all year round going forward.
And that includes the social safety net programs like SNAP for
Yes, sir.
veterans. Thank you. And as a follow-up, talking about homelessness programs, Congress, these two committees that are sitting in front of you here today have failed to extend much-needed pandemic-era authorities that were proven to be effective in reducing housing insecurity, while also connecting homeless veterans to health care, appointments, and job interviews. Your testimony mentions H.R. 3848, the HOME Act, which would address these problems. Do you have any thoughts on how Congress should proceed and the effects of the delays in getting this bill to the President's desk on having housing insecure veterans?
Congressman, we're hoping that this moves forward. As you know, the HOME Act increases the maximum rate of per diem to VA providers. It furnishes services for shelters, food, clothing, basic necessities of Americans, especially those that are vulnerable. We fully support this, and we want to get this passed, get it signed, do whatever it is we have to do to take, when we talked about the steps of where do we stop homelessness, this is the beginning steps. These are root causes, all those issues. We're fully behind this.
Well, thank you very much. Let's get it done this Congress. Thank you.
Senator Hassan is now recognized.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and to you and Chairman Tester and our ranking members. Thank you for this hearing. Commander, thank you for your testimony. To all the Granite State VFW and auxiliary members here, thank you for your service. Very proud of our veterans in New Hampshire, and to all the veterans who are here today, regardless of what state you're from. Thank you for being here And to our Vietnam vets in particular, welcome home. Can't say that enough. Commander, in your testimony, you mentioned claim sharks, people who are not accredited benefits agents, but who nonetheless offer to, quote, help veterans file their benefits claims, and then they charge enormous fees. So I'm a strong supporter of the Guard VA Benefits Act that would help crack down on claim sharks who target veterans. But can you just please discuss a little bit more the important role that accredited agents play in helping veterans access benefits and how these claims sharks undermine this important work?
I absolutely love to. The importance of the VSOs, any of the Veteran Service Officers. Number one, it's free.
Yeah.
These claim sharks are breaking the law. And ever since the PACT Act was signed, we never even heard of a claim shark.
Right.
These people came, there's been hustlers and grifters ever since currency was invented. And as soon as the PACT Act came out, all of a sudden we got attorneys that want to get involved. To sit there and prey upon family members that just lost a veteran, to sit there and prey on a vulnerable veteran, that's a shark. That's why we call him a shark. And it's against the law.
Right.
All we're asking is to reinstitute penalties.
Yeah.
Put the penalties back. It's no different. I mean, look, I'm from New Jersey. I get it. What's
Right.
down here, the crime in D.C., I got the same in New Jersey. If they said carjacking is illegal, but there's no penalty, I'd have to walk everywhere I go in the state of New Jersey.
Right.
That's what, I mean, I hate to use, a very oxymoron like that, but truly, all we're asking is put the penalty back. They prey upon us. It was totally amazing that before the PACT Act was signed, you never heard about this.
Right. Right.
They saw the money, they smelled the blood. And that's why we're against this, man.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that very clear explanation. Very, very clear. I want to move on to one quick topic before my time is up. You mentioned also, Commander, the need for the VA to provide easily accessible health care and counseling for women veterans at all VA locations. To help address issues faced by women veterans, this committee has worked on a bipartisan basis to pass into law several key pieces of legislation. The Deborah Sampson Act that eliminated some of the barriers to care that women veterans encounter, and the Dr. Kate Hendricks Thomas Service Act that expanded eligibility for breast cancer screening. We need to continue building on this work. I am out of time, but I would love it in the course of this discussion this morning, if you can just touch on how we can increase access to care for women veterans and fully integrate them into the VA care.
Man, Pat Murray's testified in front of several subcommittees and committees. I'm going to pass this on to him to make sure you get exactly the answer you want.
With the chair's indulgence.
Oh, I'm
thank you.
sorry. How's it work, sir?
Yeah. Thank you. That would be great.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ma'am, one of the things that we're seeing is preventive care is critically important. Things like prenatal vitamins. Veterans who are pregnant are not treated that they're pregnant until they actually are positive. Having access to prenatal vitamins is incredibly important to help prepare healthy bodies for that future next step.
Right. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Tuberville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for being here today. My state of Alabama, we have anybody here? We got a few. Thank you very much. Real quickly, under the Trump administration, there was an evaluation of a lot of people in the VA. It's not just about money. It's not about buildings. It's about people who work in those buildings. 4,000 people were fired for cause. This administration has allowed them to come back with back pay and work in the VAs. It's a disgrace. Do your job or you don't work in the VA. You deserve great care. Great care, not average care. Now, unfortunately, the VA has lost its way under this administration. They've gotten caught up in the border crisis caused by President Biden and his open border policies, while the VA should be leveraging every available resource to ensure timely and quality care to veterans. A section of the VA Financial Service Center helps process health care claims for illegal aliens. VA community care providers are used by the DHS to provide care for illegal aliens. Do you approve, Mr. Chairman, of the Biden administration using the VA and our taxpayer dollars to assist with health care claims processing illegal aliens at ICE detention centers?
Senator, it is our understanding from even going to Chairman Boss's committee and speaking to the VA secretary that there's 10 VA employees on the border processing ICE financial claims. They've been doing this since 2002. Obviously, we are against if VA's using resources, medical resources on undocumented immigrants, we're against that. But from our understanding, and if I'm answering your question, Senator, I want to make sure I'm understanding that we have 10 people, I shouldn't say we, the VA, not we. The VA has 10 people down on the border doing medical billing process. And it's not taking away from anything from veterans in the VA, sir.
So that being said, my Bill 3490, the No VA Resources for Illegal Aliens Act, would stop any of this from happening. Would you support that?
I don't believe we've seen that. We have? It's something, if you'd like to speak to our staff here in D.C., sir, we should be willing.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Brownlee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, VFW, for being here. I love the energy in this room and your determination and commitment and advocacy for getting all of this legislation done for our nation's veterans. So thank you very, very much. Mr. Commander, I wanted to thank you for your support for the Elizabeth Dole Home Care Act. And I know that your people testified or sent a statement for the record in front of the House VA Committee, and you wrote about how important this bill is, particularly for our veterans who are experiencing early onset of dementia, which I think is extremely important. I think the Elizabeth Dole bill is very important for our aging veterans. I think the Elizabeth Dole bill is very important for our disabled veterans. So if you could just speak a little bit about why this bill is important and why veterans cannot afford to wait any longer for its enactment.
Thank you, ma'am. The VFW believes it is imperative that we pass this piece of legislation on the caregivers because it's so important. Look around, all the blue hats out here, whether they're male or female, they're family members. They were caregivers before that term even came about. So we support this legislation. We want this to pass. We're hoping that sometimes what happens, and as you know better than I do, when we change regulations or we change the law, those already on it, I'm getting kicked off. That we be mindful of that, and we're more than willing to work with you to be sure that doesn't happen. But we're on board with this.
Well, thank you very much. I think Ms. Dole is going to be here later in this meeting, and I just, this is an important bill, and it is, at the end of the day, it is what veterans, I believe, want. And we know that the health outcomes are far better with veterans being taken care of in their homes versus in institutionalized care. So I really, really do appreciate your advocacy around this. So I have very little time left, but I just wanted to address the issues around the challenges, really, that all veterans are experiencing in terms of accessing survivor benefits. And VFW talked about, where Congress should be practicing better oversight around this issue. And I just wanted to say that after we had a hearing in the House, I followed up with Undersecretary Jacob and his team regarding this issue and the DIC application and the fact that it's 20 pages long, very onerous. I looked at it. I mean, I can't do my taxes by myself. God forbid that I could fill out this form by myself. So I think there is a lot of changes that need to be made. And again, I'm running out of time, but appreciate your advocacy around this and really working and engaging with VBA to make sure that they follow suit on this. The Undersecretary has promised me that they are looking at regulatory or statutory changes in this area. So thank you.
Senator Blumenthal, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here. As a law enforcement commander, as a law enforcement officer for many years, I appreciated your very direct comments on the need for effective enforcement. And let me talk about the PACT Act in that regard. Too often, there is exploitation of our veterans. I've introduced a measure called the Guard VA Benefits Act. It's bipartisan with Senator Graham and Senator Tester. I wonder if I could ask for the VFW's support for that measure to make sure that individuals accredited by the VA and supported by VSOs are not exploited by individuals promising them that they will get them benefits when all they need to do is apply for those benefits directly.
Sir, we stand behind you about 1,000,000,000%. Matter of fact, we'd love to give you one of our Claim Shark pins if you'd like to wear it that says, "Don't feed the sharks." That's how we're behind that 1,000%. You know, I was speaking earlier about, always got hustlers and grifters. Always. That's why we're against this. We provide free, not just us, all the VSOs provide free. Those people sit there and they'll tell you they have a magic wand. I'll guarantee you benefits. You're going to get X amount of dollars. But when the magic don't happen, pay me. That's what they want. Pay me. We got a contract.
I'd be happy to wear the pin, and I also want to thank the VFW and other VSOs for their support for the Afghan Adjustment Act. I've been helping to lead that effort. Two of my sons, one a Marine, the other a Navy SEAL, know firsthand how our at-risk Afghan allies remain in jeopardy, and our veterans have been at the tip of the spear in championing measures that will enable us to give those Afghan at-risk allies a path forward in this country. I'm going to give you a chance to comment in the time that I have left.
We've been supporting this for several years since it brought to the forefront. And earlier on, when the OIF and OEF vets turned up, there's plenty of Afghanistan veterans in this room. They know they worked alongside our allies. Of course, we want to support them the best way we can. Right or wrong how we left, we ain't here to debate that. But they were our allies, and we're behind this.
Thank you. I want to thank the VFW for all of its service, very often underappreciated by our veterans, but just absolutely vital. And to everyone in this room and to the many who are not here today, thank you for your continuing service. After you wear the uniform, you continue to make this country the greatest in the world. Thank you to all of you. And I don't know whether we have anyone from Connecticut here, but thank you all. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Pappas.
Thank you very much, Chairman Bost. Just want to recognize all the veterans from the Live Free or Die state of New Hampshire who are joining us here today. Met with them last night in my office. Really appreciative of the priorities that you bring to me each and every time. Also appreciative of the Claim Shark pin that you gave me last night. So thanks very much for all of your work. I wear it proudly. And Commander, I don't want to beat a dead shark here, but I do want to continue to highlight the need for the Guard VA Benefits Act, and no one could say it better than you did in your opening testimony. And I just applaud VFW for your continued work here in going after these unaccredited representatives that are engaging in predatory practices and are taking advantage of our veterans. It's really important, especially as we sit in this big room with so many folks that have served our country in a variety of different ways, to understand that we work for you, that VA works for you, and that it's so critical that we have protections and teeth to the law to make sure that no one is ripping off our veterans. We've got to make sure that we strengthen the accreditation process and ensure that everyone is going through it who is assisting veterans with their claims. I've talked to a number of constituents that have been caught up in this. They've reported that they have been paying an arm and a leg to these claim sharks companies for things and services that are offered for free by VSOs, including VFW. It's one of the reasons why I'm continuing to push in a bipartisan, bicameral fashion for this Guard VA Benefits Act. As you said, Commander, this would just reinstate the criminal penalties, which were taken away somehow a few years back, and would make sure that anyone who's assisting veterans with claims has to go through this accreditation process and abide by the law. And it's really important that there's some enforcement capability here, because right now, when a claim sharks company is charging veterans whatever they want, there's no recourse. This can be reported and flagged for VA, but there's no way that the government can go after these bad actors. So that's what this is all about. And so, Commander, maybe I could get at this from a different way. There's a competing proposal that's on the table, a bill called the PLUS Act, and it's supported by a lot of these. It has support from a lot of these claim sharks companies and lobbyists who have been having a flurry of meetings here on the Hill. Could you talk a little bit about concern that the VFW has for that legislation? Because I see this as sort of legitimizing predatory practices and opening the tent to those who are currently violating the law. But maybe I could get your take on that bill.
So the PLUS Act that you mentioned, you know, the major competing companies that are the sharks wrote the bill. And what is pretty offending, at least not from a veteran, but not for you, but to read this, is they wrote it in a way that, yes, we'll make it illegal for the other people, but it's okay for us. But anybody comes behind us, we're good. And they put in law for those that haven't jumped on board yet and you get grandfathered in, that it's illegal for them, and yes, put them in jail or do whatever you do to them. This is, everybody here knows, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir. Everybody got the pins on and we love it. We know how important this is. We know the money they're throwing at this. Look, we're veterans. We don't have no money to do that. We're thankful you allow us to come here and speak and give us our feelings and give us what our beliefs are. You allow us to come into your office and talk to you and your staff personally. That's what we do. But we don't have money to throw at this like they got. And I want to thank you for holding the line. Thank you so much for that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your advocacy on the state level, but we can't let Congress off the hook. We need to pass this at the federal level. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Senator Rano, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Aloha to all of you who are here, all of the veterans organizations. Thank you very much for all that you do for our country and what you've done. I particularly, of course, want to give a big shout out to the veterans who have come all the way from Hawaii. They probably came the farthest from Hawaii. Where are you guys? All right. Big shout out to you. And I know that we cover a lot of issues for the veterans, but I have to say that I sit on 5 committees in the Senate, and the Veterans Committee is one that really is characterized by bipartisanship. And that is why we are able to get a lot done that reflects our support for the veterans, and especially as we see more women who are serving now and more female veterans, and the particular, I think, needs of the women veterans are being met by all of you. And I know that all of you, by the way, where is the women? Where are the women who are going to be testifying? Yay, big shout out to you folks, that there is support all around for to make sure that we are meeting the particular health care and other needs of the women veterans. So thank you very much for all of you being here, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Leo.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Well, I'm excited to see some fellow VFW members in the crowd. I suspect I got some Pennsylvanians in the house. Are anybody here? Okay, here we go. We can beat the dead shark. I'm game with that. Commander, I'm surprised you're able to keep it from swearing talking about these guys. I heard hustlers and grifters. Okay. I'll ask an easy question. And I know the answer because I used a VFW, VSO, when I did my claims to the VA. What do you charge?
Sir, free.
Exactly right. And look, I think that's an important message that my fellow veterans maybe don't know, right, is that there are folks who will help you do this for free. It's not just the VFW. There are plenty of VSOs who will serve veterans and help them navigate benefits they've earned, right? That's what we're talking about. That's part of the obligation this country has to everyone who wears the uniform, peace, war, whatever. You've earned those benefits. It comes from your service. No one should hesitate coming to the VA to get it. So that's all I want to say. I'm with you in this fight. We got to take on these sharks. We've got bipartisan buy-in. I hope to get this done, and we're with you as long as it takes. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Senator Tillis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, everybody here. I have to do the obligatory. Either live in or have spent some time in North Carolina. Can you raise your hand? There you go. Thank you all for being here. Just very brief. Commander, in your opening statement, I was here for that. We were talking about veteran suicide. And I think you're right. You were saying, excuse me, if you could reduce 1 out of 5, that's 4 a day. 2 out of 5 is 10 a day. It's a big number over time. The concern that I have is that the majority of them are not connected to the VA. More than half of them are not connected to the VA today. And one of the things that I've been trying to preach, and hopefully I think that you all reviewed it and you're okay with it, the Veterans Bill of Rights, which is for these people who are going out there and convincing them to, these attorneys basically taking exorbitant fees to actually represent them for Camp Lejeune Toxics Act. I want them to read a statement to them or give them a statement that says, do you realize that you don't have to pay a dime to apply for this? Do you realize that there are VSOs out there that will do it for free? Do you realize that you have congressional offices that are also tasked with doing this every day? Until you've exhausted all these possibilities, which will not cost you a dime and net you more benefits, do you really want to sign this agreement with an attorney? I'm going to try to do my best to get that done quickly. Here's the main, I want to do it to protect the veteran and not to have these people rip off qualified veterans. But I also want to do it because I believe in my heart of hearts with all of this advertising, these damn ads are driving me crazy, but with all these advertising that's going on right now, maybe it's a way to actually get some of those people who are not connected to the VA connected. If they see that they have these rights, if they see that they can call a congressional office, what do you think about the Veterans Bill of Rights, and what do you all think we should do just to get it done?
Sir, I'm going to pass this off to Pat Murray, our legislative director.
Senator, we support this proposal fully. I think what we can get it done, bring it down to the floor hotline at, I don't know, after lunch. But what we want to do is continue banging that drum that it's not just the free option. There's an entire network out there.
100%.
It's VSOs, it's county,
well,
it's state,
that's why
it's
in the
everybody.
Bill of Rights, that's what I'm saying. Here, we can work on the wording, but here are all the resources that you have as a veteran that you should exhaust before you sign a retainer for a law firm is more interested in what they get at the end of the day than doing right by the veterans.
Sir, you are absolutely right. There is an abundance of choice already out there, and we want veterans to go to that first.
Well, we'd like you all's feedback on maybe some of the details of the Bill of Rights, but I think it helps us. I think it puts these folks in their place, and I think it gets more veterans connected, which gets to a key problem that I want is fewer men and women taking their lives every day. We need to help them. Thank you all.
Representative McGarvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we have any veterans here who are ever stationed in or live in Kentucky now, we're glad to have you all here. So thank you for being here. Commander Sarmiento, thank you so much. You know, people sometimes tell me they have a hard time understanding what's going on in Washington. I hope they listen to your testimony because there is no doubt we appreciate it, both your thoughtfulness and your candor in that regard. I'm truly inspired listening to so many of these stories, observing the strength and the passion with which you all advocate for our nation's veterans, the men and women who are willing to put on a uniform and sacrifice everything to keep this country safe. Your expertise empowers us and the committee members to work together and to do all we can to ensure access to the benefits and the services that veterans and their families have earned. So again, I thank you guys for being here. You mentioned in your testimony today several quality of life issues, which I like to call social determinants of health, that affect veterans and their families. It's issues like transitioning out of the military, food security, housing, employment, transportation, child care. The list goes on and on and on. I believe this committee and the VA can and must do better to address social determinants, which we know are significantly tied to health outcomes. These issues don't exist in silos. They all affect veterans' health. So I think we got to start treating them that way. Commander Sarmiento, I'm getting my question here. The existing benefits and approaches are often disparate and require veterans or spouses to navigate several separate and unconnected programs, which can be confusing and overwhelming. It seems our current system doesn't approach health from a holistic perspective. Do you think it would improve veteran health if the VA treated resources like transportation, childcare, employment, and stable access to food and housing as part of a holistic approach to veterans' health?
Yes. The answer, the simplest, sir, the simplest is absolutely yes. And I think that starts, we talked about the TAP Promotion Act. When you do the transition, once that act's in, now you're exiting the military. It starts there. Then it trans off with a handoff to the VA. And if we can get everybody talking and on the same page, it's a win-win. Sometimes you're right, and government gets siloed. Yep. The VA's here, DOD's here, other people are here, and I don't work for you, you don't work for me. If we can just get people talking and ease the transition of everything you said, it's simple. It sounds simple, I know. Look, you know better than me. It sounds simpler than it is. Yeah. But we're willing to work on this, and we believe starting with the TAP Promotion Act, when you're exiting the military, to do a handoff to the VA.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate all your service, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Representative Rosendale, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you everyone for coming in and attending today. Commander Sarmiento and the rest of the veterans of foreign wars of the United States for coming to Washington, D.C. to testify today. I look forward to having representatives from the Montana chapter of the VFW in my office later today, and I always appreciate your perspectives and insight on all the veterans' issues. In your written testimony today, you stated adopting a value-based healthcare model would allow for a patient system-centered system that aligns with the VA's whole healthcare approach. Helping lead the charge on a bill that would establish a pilot program to allow veterans to receive a health savings account and use the money to obtain medical services through a direct primary care arrangement. The legislation would make it easier for veterans to see their doctor and spend money on preventative measures to improve their health before getting sick. I was the insurance commissioner of Montana from 2016 until 2020, and I'm proud to say that I was able to get authorized direct primary care agreements between private individuals and doctors, physicians, for a very low cost. And not only have we received incredible response from the patients themselves, but from the doctors that are delivering that care. They have a much more close and intimate relationship with the physicians. So it has been working out extremely well for everyone involved, and has been able to address some of these issues that are chronic conditions like high blood pressure and diabetes, so that we make sure that we have a good maintenance program in place. What I would like to ask Commander Sarmiento is, what ideas do you have to make the care at the VA more patient-centric?
So I'm going to pass, our executive director definitely a little better at this than I am.
Okay.
I'm going to pass this off to Ryan so I don't sit here with an answer and try to dance around you and go, obviously you want your question answered.
Perfect.
Well, thank you, Commander-in-Chief, and thank you, Mr. Rosendale, for the question. The VFW has had a lot of discussion on this very issue. Now first, to be perfectly frank, when Phoenix happened in almost a decade ago, we were out there saying, look, community care is part of VA care, and that's very important. What we've seen over the last 10 years is you've had the Choice Program, now you have Mission Act, you've had other programs here or there. One thing, here's what I'm concerned about. The Secretary talks about how much VA is spending on community care, but you look at how much of that is emergency room care. That is the most expensive and most fractured care that a veteran can receive. Some of the things that we've talked about with Dr. El Nahal and VHA and even the Secretary is you need to lean on your third-party administrators. You need to lean on your third-party administrators heavily so that you're integrating this community care into VA care when a veteran has chosen VA as their care provider. We're pushing that very hard because the last thing we need is veterans showing up at emergency rooms receiving that fractured care. We think there are ways to do this and would be eager to work with you and the committees to address that.
Thank you very much. And again, I think that we can establish this relationship. We have a maintenance program that we can avoid crisis situations for our veterans in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
Senator King.
Commander, I wish you'd quit beating around the bush, man. We've gotten less bullshit from you today than any witness I've ever heard. And man, we see a lot of that. So anyway, it seems to me one of the themes here is common sense. Richard Starr Act. You earn two separate benefits, you should get them, period. Richard Starr, common sense. Here's the other one. One of the first hearings, I'm on Armed Services and Veterans Affairs, so I see this from both sides. One of the first hearings I was in Armed Services 10 years ago, I made the statement, I said, why don't we spend as much money on transition as we do on recruiting? In other words, let's take care of those veterans when they're coming out. And of course, the third common sense is the GUARD Act. Why are we allowing people to take money out of the pockets of veterans when you guys can do it more effectively for free? So let me talk about transition for a minute. Transition is statistically one of the most dangerous moments for veterans. That's where there's a high level of suicide, a high level of homelessness. It's a real problem. So a couple of bills. The Welcome Home Veterans Act. One of the problems is when you sign all those paperworks at the TAP, there's one little box about opting in to notify the state veteran agency. I want to change that to an opt-out because right now only 13% of veterans are known to their state agency. My vision is let's get the names to the state agency. They get the names to the VA. I want a couple of you guys or women meeting the veteran at the airport when they arrive home. So do you support the Welcome Home Veterans Act?
Yes, we do, sir. That's a common sense approach to a problem that probably got incurred by just not oversight, but overlooked. Was just overlooked. The opt-out. That's no brainer.
And then we'll get people names so they can be met and get the services they need right away. Second one is the TAP Promotion Act. You've already mentioned that. Make VA accredited representatives like yourself at the TAP day before people leave. You're for that, I take it.
We are all in on the TAP Promotion Act.
That's good. All right. The third one is the Combat Veterans Pre-Enrollment Act, so that a combat veteran can enroll in the VA healthcare before they leave their service so they get the care they need from the VA on day one. Are you in on that one?
Yes, sir. We are in on that one as well.
Well, you got it, man. Let's get this done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I want to thank Senator King for saying what we all feel. Of course, there's a statement in deep southern Illinois, we appreciate you putting the cabbage down where the hogs can eat it. So, but
what does that make us, Mr. Chairman?
Well, I thought Chairman Tester demoted you by calling you a member of Congress. So, but we do want to say thank you to the VFW for sharing this 2024 legislative priorities, and to all the veterans and families and caregivers and survivors that are in attendance here today. Now, we're going to switch over to our next panel, which will be Elizabeth Dole, and Senator Dole is going to address us, but we're going to take a 15-minute break, and then we'll reconvene.